Why does discipline feel like self-punishment now? You don't even remember when you started calling it discipline. At first, it was just something to hold on to. A plan, a rule, a way to stay ahead of the failure you swore would never catch you. But now, even the good days feel like you're chasing something that doesn't want to be caught. You follow all the rules, you always have. And still, you feel like you're failing. What do you call it? When everything that made you proud now makes you tired. What if control was never strength, just the mask you wore to prove you were still okay? You keep saying yes, but every yes is a no to yourself. And the scariest part is, you'd rather burn out than disappoint someone else. You think you're managing it, you wake up early, check your planner, hit the gym. Everything is clean, organized, intentional, but something in you feels cold. Not broken, not sad, just numb. Like you're living inside a performance you don't remember auditioning for. You reply to every message, you take on every task, you stay late, not because anyone asked, but because you're the kind of person who stays late, right? You keep moving, because if you stop even for a second, you might have to admit that none of this feels like you anymore. Here's what no one sees. Every day starts with rules, the clothes, the food, the pace. If you deviate even slightly, you spiral. You rewrite the schedule, recalculate the goals, repunish yourself, quietly. Because when something goes wrong, you don't ask what happened, you ask what you did wrong, and the loop begins again. You probably know this feeling, even if you've never said it. You do everything right, but somehow it still feels wrong. It's not burnout. Burnout implies you had energy to begin with. This is different. This is erosion, daily, silent. You keep showing up, but every version of you is it's smaller than the last. You're not crashing, you're dimming, strategically, efficiently, in a way no one would ever notice. When did it start? You can't pinpoint it. But maybe it was that time in school when you got a 92 and they asked, why not 100? Or maybe it was after that race you won, but the coach still said, you slowed down on the last lap. You didn't feel disappointed, you felt ashamed. So you tried harder. Not to be better, but to never feel that again. It wasn't fear of failure, it was fear of being seen as less. And so the rules were born. No one asked you to be perfect, but no one stopped you either. You became the reliable one, the one who didn't need reminders, didn't need breaks, didn't need help. You were praised for it, admired for it, respected for it, and it killed you a little more each time, because underneath all the control was a quiet terror that if you ever slipped, you'd be exposed. Not as lazy, not as weak, but as someone who's been pretending this whole time. You don't even feel proud when you finish something anymore. Just relieved that it's over, until the next thing. Because there's always a next thing. And you've trained yourself to say yes before your body even considers the cost. You tell yourself it's about standards, discipline, goals, but it's really about something else. Something you can't quite name. Something like, if I keep doing everything, they can't say I'm not enough. But here's the part that still stings. Even when you do everything, they still might. And worse, you still might believe them. You have memories that don't come with sound, just images, flashes. Sitting in your childhood room, rewriting your homework so the handwriting looked focused. Wiping the smudges off your test paper so no one could say you didn't care enough. Tearing out pages of your planner at night because your day wasn't productive enough to be seen. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You were trying to disappear the parts of you that felt unacceptable. And somehow that instinct followed you here. To adulthood. To the grind. To the spreadsheet. The workout. The spotless inbox. You've made control look effortless. You've made self-erasure look like ambition. No one suspects anything because the performance is seamless, but you know that the harder you work, the harder it gets to feel anything at all. Sometimes you sit in silence just to hear what your brain might say without a task to focus on, and it doesn't say much, just noise, deadlines, corrections, rules. You miss softness, but you don't know what it would look like on you anymore. Here's the part no one teaches. Discipline doesn't heal shame. It just hides it. And every time you try to outrun the guilt by doing more, being better, showing up harder, you feed the very thing that's draining you. It's not about rest. You wouldn't even know how to rest. It's about why rest feels like failure in the first place. You have moments, tiny ones, where you almost say no, almost leave the message unread, almost skip the routine. And in those moments, something surges. Not freedom, not relief, but fear. The fear of becoming what you were taught not to be, undisciplined, unreliable, unworthy. So you say yes, again and again and again. Until one day, you don't even check if you want to say yes. It just happens. Autopilot. Because pleasing them feels safer than listening to yourself. You thought control would make you stronger, but the truth is, it just made the cage quieter. You stopped crying, stopped pausing, stopped feeling anything that didn't serve the system you built to survive. And maybe the scariest part is how easy it is to forget that you were supposed to survive as yourself. Not as a checklist, not as a shell, not as a version that never asks for anything. You were supposed to survive as yourself, not as a checklist, not as a shell, not as a version that never asks for anything. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how easy it became to forget what yourself ever felt like. You don't miss joy. You miss knowing what it was for. You don't miss rest. You miss not feeling like you had to earn it. And this is where something quietly broke. The day you stopped checking in with your body. The day hunger felt like discipline. The day your eyes burned from sleep deprivation and you called it progress. You crossed the line so slowly that when you finally looked up, there was no line left to see. You don't even know if you're tired. You just assume you are because the days feel heavier and the mirror shows someone who hasn't smiled in weeks. You tell yourself, I just need to get through this week. But how many weeks has it been? How many times have you whispered just one more push and pushed straight past yourself? You tell everyone you're fine. You even tell yourself. But there's a version of you that watches from just outside the frame, wondering how long you'll keep pretending this isn't collapse. What do you do when rest feels more dangerous than exhaustion? When stillness doesn't feel like peace, but like exposure? What if you've built your whole life on being needed, and now you don't know who you are when no one is watching? What if your strength was just you holding in the scream for too long? Right here is where you got used to disappearing. Not dramatically, not loudly, just subtly. A little more every time you said yes when you didn't mean it. Every time you finished the task, even though your body said stop. Every time you smiled so no one would ask how much it hurt to keep smiling. You're not pretending anymore. You are the mask. And even you forget when it first slipped on. This isn't burnout. This is grief in slow motion. Grief for the parts of you that you sacrificed to be enough. Grief for the softness you buried, for the voice you ignored, for the dreams you deferred because they didn't fit the schedule. You didn't break down. You just stopped showing up, even to yourself. How many days do you survive by simply not asking if this is living? What if every strength you built was just a better disguise for pain? What if no one ever really knew you because you never felt safe enough to show them? And this is when the silence started to scream. Not outside, not even in your head, but somewhere in the space between doing everything and feeling nothing. You keep moving, because you don't know how to stop. You keep pushing, because slowing down might mean facing the cost of everything you've ignored. And that cost? It's not just exhaustion, it's the quiet terror that maybe this version of you, the productive, the composed, the disciplined one, wasn't built to survive, just to function. You're not failing, you're fading, and no one sees it, because you never made a sound. Maybe it was never about being strong. Maybe it was just about being good enough to be left alone. You kept showing up, even when there was nothing of you left to offer. You didn't stop asking for help. You just stopped expecting an answer. And somewhere in between the skipped meals and the perfect checklists, you forgot how to want anything you weren't already supposed to earn. It wasn't control you needed. It was safety. But you didn't know how to ask for that without sounding ungrateful. You smiled through the ache. You outperformed the silence. You learned to make peace with punishment if it kept the approval coming. What do you call it when the applause makes you feel emptier than the silence ever did? What if your entire identity was just a list of ways to not be rejected? And maybe that's the thing you're still not ready to say out loud, that you built everything from the fear of being too much, or not enough, or both at once. that you didn't grow into discipline, you were carved into it. It didn't fall apart, it faded, and no one noticed but you. Maybe this isn't healing, maybe it's just hearing your own voice again.